Hanna-Barbera, in many people's minds, saved animation. When theatricals waned and television gained in popularity and became more preeminent, Hanna-Barbera was one of the only studios that could make a switch and produce television on the cheap. And of course they started with primetime shows like the Flintstones or Huckhound. And then they had to adapt and do action-adventure shows and superhero shows. Birdman and Galaxy Trio, for some reason, stand out more, and people remember more, and it's pretty much the most iconic offering that Hanna-Barbera had in this space.
Great Scott! A ray turned a pterodactyl to a skeleton!
Birdman is a winged superhero powered by the sun, and his powers come from the sun god Ra. He can form a solar shield, he can blast solar blasts, but because his power comes from the sun, if he's not in the sun for a certain amount of time, his powers wane. He's accompanied by a giant purple eagle, his sidekick, Avenger. He lives in a volcano where he has this very cool headquarters with a giant console that he sits at, and he receives via video link missions from a mysterious eye-patched gentleman named Falcon 7. And basically, he takes care of all the baddies in a city called Central City.
No use. Not enough strength anymore to break these bonds. If I could reach that sun machine.
What's interesting is the weakness that they wrote for him, where he had to be in the sun to recharge. You know, for all practical purposes, if he were a real superhero, that would be a drag. On a smoggy day, crime could run free. So they use that device in pretty much every episode.
The area we're looking for is just ahead. Let's go, Avenger!
Keith Andes, who is the voice of Birdman, great set of pipes. He's an Oxford-educated guy and just had this sort of stoic, kind of beautiful theatrical feel to the character of Birdman.
This is the weirdest thing I've ever seen. All the subjects on this planet are in some kind of trance. They're all alive and breathing, but they can't move.
Birdman and the Galaxy Trio was, in some ways, a response to what was going on elsewhere on television and in popular culture around the time. I think that same season when Birdman came out, you had a Spider-Man cartoon hitting air, a Fantastic Four cartoon hitting air, a parody cartoon called Batfink, I think, hitting air, and you'd had Star Trek on the air for, I think, a tiny bit by that point. And so I think that this is, in some ways, Hanna-Barbera is a studio reacting to Marvel and DC and them coming into Hanna-Barbera's space, which is Saturday morning TV. And so I think that that's a response to those forces. And so with Birdman, you have Hanna-Barbera putting forward a unique, their own superhero. And with Galaxy Trio, I think you have them kind of doing a superhero Star Trek sort of show for kids.
Well, what are we waiting for? Let's go!
Birdman and Galaxy Trio never really appeared together in a television show. They were separate elements, and I think they only appeared together in a comic book. So no, they're not a team. They have nothing to do with each other at all. In a half hour, you'd have a Birdman element, a Galaxy Trio element, and another Birdman element.
You better tell us how to release the people of this planet from that sleep.
The anti-sleep gas is in the back of the rocket. Let me down!
Not till we're sure you're telling the truth.
I think it was more new to everybody working on shows that involved superhero characters. I mean, way back in the, before my days, they put cartoon antics to a superhero. Didn't look very good. So there was a different way of doing things. So at that point when Hanna-Barbera started doing these superheroes, we were always trying not to animate in the cartoon vein as you were trained to and keep it more simplistic so that it didn't look like a cartoon per se, a funny cartoon, because superheroes don't do the funny squash and stretch and get bashed and the head falls off and things of this nature, at that time. So that was always the difficult point at that time to keep and learn that, and that's a whole new regime of doing animation.
Right on course for Planet K7. Full power ahead.
I was just starting out in the business. I'd only been probably painting backgrounds for Hanna-Barbera maybe 2.5 years. I worked on the Galaxy Trio, and it was an outer space adventure. They would go on to different planets and things, and it was pretty successful.
Let's go!
What we did then was basically we were handed a pencil drawing of a landscape. It didn't necessarily have to be a landscape. It could have been outer space. It could have been an interior shot of a spaceship or an interior shot of a building structure. But whatever it was, basically you looked at it and then you'd take carbon paper and you would could lay the carbon paper down and put the pencil layout over that and make sure all the registration lines lined up with the pegboards. Then you would trace down basically the areas that were going to be painted. You could mask off certain areas and lay in the sky either with a sponge or a roller or a brush. Put the technique, the sky in, and it was a procedure of doing the backgrounds of distant stuff first coming forward. So it was a trial and error, but it was great.
A blast of solar light should hold you a while. Hurry, Captain, before he attacks again.
Look out!
Alex Toth is regarded in animation and drawing communities as a gift, as an amazing talent. He is the artist's artist, and his influence is felt to this day. He was amazing. He drew for DC during the golden age years of The Flash and Green Lantern and all that, and then finally found himself at Hanna-Barbera, where he worked on Johnny Quest. He did Space Ghost designs. He did the Birdman designs, the Galaxy Trio designs. Basically, it's a lot of what he's remembered for.
That gas vapor has put my friends into a trance. I'd better get them back to Condor 1 and revive them.
As you see, he has all these great instructions. He's extremely detailed, and he forged the show out of the model sheets. Basically, everything about the show that you need to know, and even more than that, is in these model sheets. A lot of the stuff that he did on the model sheets never even makes it to the actual 7-minute cartoon because he got so detailed about it. And these are, by any measure, are just gorgeous pieces of work. His design sense was phenomenal. Weirdly, he could just inject so much emotion into these characters with how he designed them. People today working in the industry still feel sort of humbled by this man's work. Look at this is great. Note, no bare flesh showing. Eliminate chainmail detail, except in close-up held art. Detail is shown here to indicate which areas are, parentheses, gunmetal gray, male. All other areas are armor. 6.5 to 7 feet tall. Wears belt from scene 20 to scene 102. Portable weather control belt. I mean, whoo!
There's our answer. Someone, something is looting this planet of all its treasures.
I think the level of detail in these model sheets from Alex Toth just show you what a force he must have been on this show and any of the shows he worked on. And animation is a tough medium to work in, and in every stage you're fighting just to keep the idea there. And at a time when Marvel was redefining what this kind of fiction meant for people, and you know, the shockwaves were pretty big with Fantastic Four and all that coming out in comics about 5 years before these TV shows. Alex stood up and held his own in a really unique way and carved out his unique tone.
Dr. Shark managed to escape, but I feel sure the day will come when we meet again.
You know, Birdman the show is remembered both fondly and with a tinge of curious wonderment, bemusement, I think. Even for the people who grew up with it, I think that it hit this strange nerve. There's sort of a tone about it. I don't know if it's the color palette or the music choices or the dynamic between Birdman and Avenger and what the villains were like, but everyone remembers it pretty fondly, but you can't really articulate what it is about it. It's just a feeling more than anything, I think. If you mention the show to anyone, the first thing they remember is the call, is the Birdman. And that happened maybe once every episode, not even every single episode did it happen. Basically, I think that the show is very much remembered almost for that alone.
Birdman!
But there's just something primal and iconic about Birdman. He has these giant wings, he's got a yellow cowl, he's solar powered. There's just something about him that just speaks to you on sort of a spinal level. It doesn't even get up into your brain. It just is. It just works.